It's time for the Daily Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about the movies and books and television and directors and film festivals and this really long list of stuff that I know nothing about, but they gave it to me and they really wanted me to read through it. And that's all I can really say about it, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Planet podcast. My name is Scott Daly and I am your host, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Matt Freeman. Matt, how are you today?
I'm fantastic, Scott, and I am thrilled to be talking about a very particular subset of movies known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yes.
Scott, what does that mean exactly?
It means that there are a whole bunch of movies around these Marvel characters that all take place in the same universe, for lack of a better word. So everything that happens in... Yeah, there's continuity between all the movies. Everything that happens in one movie carries forward to the other ones, even if it's not a direct sequel to that movie. It's a concept that's been around in comic books forever, but Marvel brought it to the big screen. And Matt, why are we talking about this week?
I think that yet another Marvel MCU, as the kids call it, movie is coming out. I think Thursday. Is that right?
That is correct.
A couple days from now. The one of the big ones, I suppose, if you're going to classify them that way, it's Civil War. What is it? Captain America: Civil War? Is that technically the title?
Yep, that's the title.
It's going to be a big. They're basically ripping off Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how I'm going to choose to view this.
I mean, they did come out after it, so...
Yeah, well, I read something, actually, that said that what made them decide to go ahead with this movie was that DC had announced that they were going to do Batman versus Superman.
Huh.
They were like, well, let's get in on the versus dollar, the versus market.
Oh, right. Yeah, so it's the start of phase 3 of the Marvel Universe. They've divided their films into phases. And it's the big start of phase 3, which is going to be a very interesting one, I think. So it's exciting. So we're gonna look at where we came from, and then look at where we're going with all this Marvel stuff. And because there's so many Marvel movies, Matt, we don't have just one guest this week. We have two guests.
Well, yeah, we need lots of people to talk about all these movies.
Yeah, because it's huge. We have both James Gentry. Hey, James.
Howdy, guys. What's up?
And Daniel Freeman. Hey, Daniel.
Hello. Hello.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
You guys love Marvel movies. And
I enjoy Marvel movies. Yes.
Especially Thor and Thor 2, Dark World.
See, the joke there, ladies and gentlemen, is James Gentry, who proclaimed himself a Marvel expert, has not seen Thor or Thor 2, The Dark World.
I never said I was an expert.
You kind of did.
Yeah.
Just
and
fan.
And Daniel is one of the top experts in Marvel that I know by virtue of being one of the 5 people that I know.
Well, there you go. This is the team we've assembled.
I mean, in my defense, I have actually seen all of the movies.
There's an Avengers quote that works for this. We must have been truly desperate to turn to these people. All right, but before we get into all that Marvel stuff, let's talk about some news, because there's been some exciting movie news happening this past week. First up, Space Jam. Did you guys like Space Jam?
Yeah.
I was
at the
like
time, of course.
7 when that movie came out. I don't even remember.
Yes.
It was pretty. Yeah, I mean, if you liked even Basketball on the Surface, I mean, it had Looney Tunes in it, so who didn't like it? And Bill Murray.
Confident. Yeah, I almost confidently said, yeah, and Shaq starred in it.
Well, wow.
I remember playing like some console game like way more than like right around the same time.
NBA
it was like
Grand
NBA
Turbo.
Jam.
NBA Jam Turbo. Yeah.
Yeah. That was fun.
Anyway, the point is that we're getting a sequel to Space Jam. Space Jam 2, starring LeBron James, is coming, and it will be directed by Justin Lin, the man that made Fast and the Furious.
Oh, of course.
A good series again. He directed, I think, Fast 4, Fast 5, and Fast 6.
You love Fast.
Yeah, I do. And I don't know.
I like
about
Tokyo Drift.
I don't know about this. Shut up. I don't know about this movie. I think the reason why people remember Space Jam fondly is because they were children when they watched it. But at the same time, Trainwreck had LeBron James show that he was kind of a good actor, because I thought he was really funny in that movie, so maybe he'll be good in this. I mean, it's not going to be hard to be a better actor than Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Agreed. He was actually good in Trainwreck.
Yeah, it was funny.
Is it going to be with Looney Tunes characters, I assume?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel pretty aggressively neutral about this.
How can you be aggressively neutral?
It's hard to explain, okay?
He would fight somebody for the privilege of not having to argue about it.
Yes, that
doesn't make sense. Okay, so I don't know. I like Justin Lin a lot. It could be good. I don't know. Gentry, this should be your movie. You love basketball. And you love Looney Tunes.
I haven't watched this movie in like over 10 years, maybe 15 years. What about it?
There's nothing about it.
It exists.
Yeah, it exists, and a new one will exist.
Yeah,
and that's all there is to it.
I have no comment. I have no comment on Space Jam. I mean, I don't know. I guess sure. If it's, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm assuming it's going to be still pretty cheesy and lame for kids. I don't know. Like, these cartoons, like, do they still make these movies where they used to like put like Brendan Fraser in them and they're like all cartoons running around and stuff? Do they still do that?
No, they don't put Brendan Fraser in movies at all anymore.
Brendan Fraser had like horrible tax problems and then a horrible divorce, and now is never going to be in a movie ever again.
Poor Brendan Fraser.
Especially not with Looney Tunes.
We need to make some more mummies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they should make like another trilogy of mummy movies. I would watch those.
Where he has a kid and the kid.
You guys are ruining my segue into the Marvel Cinematic Universe because they are making another mummy movie, and it has everyone's favorite actor in it. A little person I like to call Jack Sparrow. It's gonna be.
What?
Yeah.
Johnny Depp for real?
Johnny Depp is gonna be in the Mummy. So they're making a mummy. They're making a Universal Monsters cinematic universe because everyone's making a cinematic universe now, and the Mummy is one of them.
Oh wow!
But we'll get into that in a bit when we talk about the effect that Marvel has had on the film industry. Let's move on to our next bit of news. Tomb Raider, another old.
Oh my lord!
We're rebooting the Tomb Raider series, but they've cast Alicia Vikander as Lara Croft, who you may know from Ex Machina or the other movie that she won an Academy Award for that I'm blanking on right now.
Oscar movie 7.
Man, I know. We're a great movies podcast today.
Was she in The Danish Girl?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so what do you guys think of this? I think she's a really talented actress, and this is a big franchise, I think, hopefully, for them, that she's getting attached to, that she will lead. She will not be the second role in a franchise. She will be leading it. So I think it's good for her.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. I remember the old ones being entertaining. Entertaining video game movies, basically. I wonder if we're going to be like 70 talking about the new Tomb Raider franchise that they're booting up with a new 20-year-old actress.
It's possible.
We'll be talking about the new Spider-Man franchise.
That's true.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So the thing with me is, there's also Assassin's Creed coming out later this year, which is a video game property made into a movie, starring a pretty big actor. Michael Fassbender is starring in Assassin's Creed.
Wow.
So I don't know if this is like a trend towards legit video game adaptations with the real actors in them or not.
Oh man, Daniel.
Yeah.
Who? Mortal Kombat, Daniel.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
They're making another one?
No, I want them to.
Do you?
Don't you?
Do you?
Well, the first one was great and a perfect movie in every way.
I agree.
But all of the sequels are pretty terrible. So
There was
I don't
more than
know.
one sequel?
I think there were two.
There's two, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're gonna do Batman vs Superman, they might as well combine it with Mortal Kombat.
Batman v Superman v Liu Kang.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, they already have those arcade games that are like Street Fighter, but then there's the Predator there for some reason.
Oh yeah, they have Marvel vs. Capcom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I gotcha.
All right. Speaking of the DC cinematic universe and how it's in shambles because Batman vs Superman was terrible.
Have all of y'all seen it? Matt, did you end up seeing it or no?
No, but
and you never should.
I've discussed it at length, as if
as if you have. So anyway, what I wanted to say was the director of The Flash has left the project, citing creative differences. That's Seth Grahame-Smith. He's a writer. I think this was his first big directorial debut, and he's off the project now. So the rumors are what's happening is Warner Brothers is freaking out because Batman vs. Superman didn't perform the way they wanted it to, and they're trying to drastically change things around, and now they're butting heads with all the directors who have already gone down the path that they wanted. I know the rumor is that Justice League, Zack Snyder, and them are butting heads a lot right now. There were rumors that James Wan, who's directing Aquaman, was going to leave. He's staying on the project, but it doesn't look good for your DC universe, Daniel.
They'll be fine. Everyone will soon understand that it's a far superior franchise. Just give it about 10 years, and that'll be proof right.
What's funny about all this is that they're gonna make plenty of money. They're just not gonna make as much money as they could have. Even if the executives go in, what's gonna happen now is all these other directors have probably made decent movies, and now the executives are gonna go in and ruin those decent movies by just grabbing all the levers and frantically pushing on them. And we're going to get a second crop of crap movies that are still going to make money, and they will learn nothing. And then there'll be the third crop of crap movies because they've learned all the wrong lessons from the first several crops.
I actually agree with all of what you just said.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about the DC universe is they build themselves as the director's films, where each director was going to get choices, and the thing on Marvel is Marvel controls their films with kind of an iron fist. They have a tone they want to set in the film, and they have things that they want to do, and the director has to fall in line or they're gone. And that's what happened to Edgar Wright with Ant-Man. Luckily, we ended up getting a good Ant-Man anyway, but DC always build themselves as, we're the director's studio, we're going to bring in directors that have a particular vision, and then we're going to let them make that movie. They're backtracking on that it seems like, because they're scared.
Yep, and that's going to be a mistake too, just like everything else they do.
Yep.
I agree.
So I think they're really hoping that Suicide Squad is a home run for them at this point. And it very well could be. I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of impossible for Will Smith to be in a movie that doesn't make $1 gajillion, so they'll probably be fine.
But is that true anymore?
I don't know.
How did After Earth do?
I think it's...
Oh, Lord.
I think it actually still made money, which is why I believe this, but I may be wrong.
I just don't know if he has that kind of that pull anymore. I mean, he hasn't been relevant.
I think it made $60 million or something.
Yeah.
Complete
which might have been enough for that. I don't know. Did the Concussion movie make money?
Oh, I thought it flopped.
I never saw it because it didn't look very good.
Well, is Suicide Squad rated R? I forget.
No, PG-13.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
After Earth made its money internationally, but
Daniel, these are movies for children. It doesn't have to be rated R.
After our discussion about Aliens, I think that children could do with some more rated R movies.
Exactly.
Okay, but
I agree strongly.
Okay, but there are lots of people out there.
Ratings are just like an idea, man.
Oh my god! All right, so let's move away from the shitty cinematic universe and move on to the good one. Let's talk about Marvel, because, like we said at the top, Phase 3 is happening. This is a big event for Marvel. It's a big event for film altogether. This has a chance of being the #1 movie of the year, and I think it probably will end up being that way. I guess it's possible that the Star Wars spinoff will do better. Actually, that probably will happen.
I think Rogue One will probably.
Yeah. But this is definitely going to be the biggest movie of the summer. I think. I think only Pixar has a chance of matching them, because people love Finding Nemo and that sequel's coming out. But the thing that I think is fascinating about Marvel and why I wanted to spend an hour talking with you guys about it is they've completely changed everything. They've changed how blockbuster movies work. We talked about we've talked about the DC universe and the Universal Monsters universe just in the news at the top of this podcast, just because every studio out there is trying to copy what Marvel has done, and most of them are failing because what they've done is kind of incredible, and the fact that they pulled it off is incredible. And I didn't really rewatch any of these movies in preparation because I've seen them so many times, but I did sit down today and watch The Avengers again, and that movie feels like it's just a celebration of the fact that, hey, we actually pulled this thing off. Because if we go back to the beginning, they really did take a big, huge risk with all this stuff. Setting up, there were 5 movies that came out before The Avengers, all with the express purpose of setting up this big, huge movie. And those movies were, for the most part, successful, but none of them matched the success of The Avengers, and if The Avengers wasn't successful, I don't know if we would be living in the world we're living in right now. So, I guess let's just go around the digital table, and get you guys' opinions on the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its effect on the industry. Matt, go first.
Yeah, I think I've enjoyed probably most of the movies on entertainment. On a I am being entertained by this movie level, even though some of them are definitely better than others as far as film products, and having depth and having good dialogue and having good acting, basically being consistent and coherent and so forth. But they're all really fun, and they all, as you talked about, maintain that very similar tone across all the movies, such that you really feel like you're watching almost like a series, kind of like how you sort of automatically think of the Star Wars films as having the same tone. It's like, well, yeah, obviously they're all the Star Wars films, and in this case, it's these is a much larger number of films made by a much larger number of people, starring entirely different people in many cases, and yet they often feel very similar. And then there's some variation within that. Like, I think Ant-Man has its own kind of quirky thing going on.
Which I like that it's a little different. Some of the movies, like, I find myself like watching the Avengers movies, and although they are like, you pretty much nailed it, Scott, by saying they're kind of like just a big celebration. Like that's exactly what they feel like. Whereas like more of the individual movies, I connect with a lot more, I guess.
I think.
But I wish
the individual movies are much more character driven,
right?
And then the Avengers are the big spectacle, huge movies. But I think they all work in their own way.
Yeah, it reminds me actually of television. In the sense that, like, I mean, we talk about Breaking Bad all the time, but like, you'll have a Breaking Bad episode that's really Skylar heavy. You'll have a Breaking Bad episode that's really Jesse heavy, and you can almost view these as like, you're getting a whole hour, or a lot of an hour dedicated to this one character, and then you kind of go back to the other characters, or you see how they interact. And the Marvel movies, they use that sort of TV-esque mechanism where you're spending a lot of time with each of these characters, so that when they go out and they interact with each other, you feel a huge amount of weight to the interactions that it isn't necessarily earned inside that movie, but that's fine because the way they're doing it allows them to do things that have never been done before in movies, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So as for how it affects
seamless.
As for how it's affected the industry, I think what you said was a good summary. It's really put a big shift in terms of how people treat franchises. We talked about the Alien franchise last week. All those movies, we made the point of saying they're all actually extremely different beasts, even though they're nominally a continuity. But now I think people are starting to treat properties and continuities and universes differently in a more coherent way that that is new and very very interesting to watch happen.
Yeah, I agree. Gentry, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you guys are saying, and the thing that kind of sticks out to me about what they've done is, kind of growing up, like, like just general fans of comics and Marvel and DC and everything, and especially like our age group, I guess, like not even like the millennials, but like our, the last 5 years, like 5 to 10 years older than us and younger than us, like we're now getting in like a fashion like almost like what we've always wanted. It's like I guess like after like 2 decades of just or multiple decades, however people are like collecting these comics, like it's built up to this culmination like of movies that have finally come out and they're actually turning out solid. You know, it's like people's like characters, favorite comic book heroes are literally coming to life in all like in this sequence of events and stories, and it's just like it's amazing because that is snowballing now into this generation's children. And I mean, it's like the timing was, I mean, just perfect, I feel like.
Yeah.
The way it kind of ended. I mean, or the way it kind of all started, and it's like going back to like the early 2000s, watching kind of like the first X-Men's or the first Spider-Man's. Like I never, like I don't think I would have been able to like really fathom this much successful like coordination between these studios and these actors and all these big producers and directors and stuff like that. And it's just it's just incredible, I guess, like how many people it's affected.
Yeah, to speak of the actors, it's kind of amazing to me that they've been able to lock down some of these people like Robert Downey Jr., where,
oh yeah,
I mean, I'm pretty sure he's one of the top movie stars, if I'm not mistaken. And
absolutely, he's got it.
And they're just like, you owe us 5 movies, basically. And he did it, and he didn't, try to fight out of it or whatever because it was a good deal for him too.
And he's even reversed his opinion and says he wants to do more.
Right.
I think the news this week was that he'd be okay with an Iron Man 4. He previously said he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. He's changing his mind, huh?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, like his role in that is he doesn't have to put any prosthetic on. Like his suit is fully CG.
Right.
It's a lot of him sitting in like a sound studio. Like he doesn't have to do a lot. Like his character is very easy. So, and he gets paid a lot of money.
Yeah, he doesn't have to look like Captain America, actually.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, he doesn't have to be cut all the time because he's Iron Man.
Yeah.
Convenient.
Yeah. So Daniel, what's your take on this? Because I know you, I think are differing in your. I think you like these movies, but I think your opinion is slightly different.
It's sort of baffling actually, because like growing up, I was way more familiar with the DC universe and like how there were the cartoons and like all the different Batman movies, and there are like 5 of them, and that was just what I knew about. And I would like come like the Iron Man movies and then like the explosion of the Avengers franchise. It was like why didn't that happen with the DC universe? It's like some perfect storm of circumstances that somehow created this monstrosity of companies that just control like all of media now because they did some collection of the right ingredients. Like I thinking back, I think it was like Iron Man 1 that actually solidified the Avengers like complete franchise. And I guess they just never had that sort of moment in the DC universe. Like they had way too many different Batmen, and they had too many little cartoons going off, not really in a consolidated way. But yeah, it's interesting, and it feels more like chance than by design that this sort of thing exploded.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoy all of the movies. They're very much like junk food movies where it's just like, yeah, the heroes are gonna go beat up the bad guys, and it's gonna follow exactly the sort of arc you expect it to follow, maybe with exactly the right number of unexpected things happening that you still have your attention drawn to it. But it's I like the Marvel movies.
That's a good segue actually, because I wanted to talk about the first phase for a little bit, and specifically Iron Man, and then even more specifically Robert Downey Jr., because I don't think that this universe would be as successful if it wasn't for him. Iron Man was the movie that kickstarted all this. It's technically the first Phase 1 movie. And Robert Downey Jr. is the guy. He's been the face of the franchise through everything. He's in Civil War. He's going to be in the Spider-Man movie as well.
Is he really?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
He's the guy, and he's the reason this works. And I think he's actually very underestimated as far as his acting ability. He's really good. Like Iron Man 3 in particular, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but Iron Man 3 is Tony Stark dealing with post-traumatic stress, and that's what the movie's about. And Robert Downey Jr.'s performance is incredible, and I've heard it's really good in Civil War too. I haven't seen it yet, but he's great, and he's made this franchise, and he's gotten rewarded for it because he gets a percentage of the gross. That's in his contract for every single one of these movies. So he has made a shit ton of money on these, but but it's deserving, I think.
Absolutely.
And I want to also touch on what you were saying, Daniel, because you're right. I grew up with the DC comics and then Spider-Man. None of these characters, if I look at Phase 1, the one I knew the most was the Hulk.
Yeah, I didn't even know who all of the Avengers were until probably after the first Iron Man movie, because why would I care about the Avengers?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't know Thor was a thing. I didn't know there was a Marvel comic with Thor in it.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was the corniest thing ever when I first heard about it. I was like, no way they're gonna pull this off as a movie, period, and especially not as part of their universe. And then they did.
Yeah.
I was pretty skeptical about the Thor in general. It's just like when you're getting bringing in a Norse mythology into the whole thing. But I guess wasn't that far off.
Yeah, but these are movies. I think these are movies that both take their core conceit seriously, but have fun with it.
Absolutely,
and I think that's why it works. And Joss Whedon was a big part of this with both the Avengers movies, and that's what he excels at. That's what he did with Buffy. That's what he did with Firefly and every other project he's worked on. The core conceit of the thing is taken seriously. But that doesn't mean you can't have fun with the product and poke fun at it. And that's what I think that's what all of these movies do. And they do incredibly well. Some not so good, like Iron Man 2 and Thor, aren't great films. And they don't necessarily advance the plot of the overall cinematic universe very much. But it almost doesn't even matter because they do just a little bit, and it still manages to come together and culminate in the Avengers. Captain America, Matt, is another character that I love Superman, so I kind of like Captain America. But how did this character work? It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that these characters from literally the 30s or 40s, which I don't know if Captain America, I don't know the actual vintage of him, but I'm pretty sure he's
you're right.
super old. I mean, it's funny. His name is Buck, right?
No.
What's his name?
That's his friend.
That's his friend too.
Steve Rogers.
Steve. Okay, well, Buck is still a canonical name. I was thinking the other day about how Batman's name is Bruce, Superman's name is Clark. Even these names, you do not find people with these names in the real world anymore because these characters are so old and they've been reinvented so many times. So it is kind of amazing that this guy who dresses in red, white, and blue is able to be made relevant in the post 9/11 cynical world we live in.
Yeah,
I don't know how that works.
And Daniel, this is a reason why the Superman character can work in film, and you don't have to subvert the entire thing every time you make a Superman movie.
Well, sure. I mean, I agree. They absolutely could have done what they have done with the Marvel comic universe with a sufficiently charismatic, Superman actor / Batman. If Robert Downey Jr. had been I don't know, the Green Lantern or something, then this would be a completely different universe that we live in. But he was Iron Man instead. So
oh my god, a parallel universe.
Yeah.
Well, in the DC universe, there are many parallel universes, so.
You know,
Yeah.
the old, I mean, we really talk about the old Superman films, and they were super corny, but the first one at least was really, really good. Christopher Reeve was a great Superman, actually.
Yeah, he was wonderful. And and I don't want to get the this was always going to turn into a Marvel versus DC thing because you almost can't help yourself. But I would never say that I want the DC movies to carry the same tone of the Marvel films. If they want to do something different, that's fine. But I still think there's a place for a corny do-good Superman even within that tone.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult, especially now that Marvel exists as the juggernaut that it is. Like, I think it was a good bet, but it didn't work out for the DC universe. Like to try and do something so different that they could establish themselves as like something not just more of the same. Like, because you definitely don't want the DC universe to just appear to be like a bad knockoff of the Marvel universe. And
well, the first trick is to make a good movie, and they haven't done that yet. So,
well, also like growing up. Oh, here we go.
Well, you know, they're trying to make it all grimdark, but the thing is, the first X-Men movies had a very similar tone. So,
oh, that's true.
I don't know what I sort of agree that it seems like they were trying to carve their own path, but it's like, look at what a disaster the third X-Men movie was, where it ends with Wolverine stabbing. It has Jean Grey killing Cyclops, and then Wolverine stabbing Jean Grey through the rib cage with his claws, and it's just a horribly sad and depressing piece of crap. And that's basically the tone that you're getting in like Man of Steel, for example, where it's just like, yep, I had to break Zod's neck with my bare hands. The end.
Martha.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Marvel though.
Yeah. But I mean, to bring it back to Marvel, I think that's the thing. I think the reason these movies have been successful is because they take themselves seriously, but they want to have fun with it, and they recognize that this is an inherently ridiculous concept: is people dressing up in costumes and fighting and saving the world. A man making a metal suit that flies through the air and shoots missiles to fight things. These are inherently ridiculous concepts, but if you take itself seriously while still having fun with it, you create an adventure type of film, and that's what these movies were, and that's why they work.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before. Like, I wish someone would do. I think Watchmen is actually the closest thing to this sort of like, you know, tactical realism superhero movie that could possibly be made, and I think that just isn't. That will never work in either the DC or Marvel universes because that's not really what they're about.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think it would work in a central main like cornerstone of a universe you're trying to build. I think it works in a one-off exploration of a character film. Yeah, absolutely. But so
the other thing too with DC, I mean, a little bit in Marvel's defense. Well, at least for me personally, like in the '90s, I wasn't exposed to a lot of DC. Like I really only knew about Superman and Batman and the Flash, I think, because of like a really cheesy show or movie, maybe. I forget what it was.
I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. But other like I had no. I mean, like just to be super like transparent, like I didn't really know Green Lantern or Aquaman or any of those characters at all. With like Marvel, like even though some of the movies were pretty shitty to start, like late '90s, early 2000s. I mean, at least they had already. At least I'd already been seen in a lot of cartoons and stuff like that. So that kind of helped me, I guess, get a little more excited. But I'm also like super partial to X-Men in general. That's why I kind of wish, the movies would have been a little bit better. But I don't know.
Sorry,
I don't complain. Shut it.
Mantis was apparently produced by Sam Raimi.
What?
Mantis.
I don't even know what that is.
What is Mantis?
Daniel, you don't remember Mantis?
What? Maybe
it was a science fiction TV show about a guy who was paralyzed and then he put on a super suit, fought crime. The suit allowed him to walk.
Who played the Mantis?
it was well, no one you would know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
But it was interesting.
too far back.
I was looking it up because I was trying to determine if it was DC or Marvel, and it's neither. But it was produced by Sam Raimi.
Okay.
Glad I could contribute to the conversation.
So Marvel.
That was great.
So I want to move on to Phase 2 because I think Phase 2, in my opinion, is where things start to get really interesting.
Can we pause and explain how they're actually making demarcations between phases? Is it just the next wave of sequels? Is that and there's like a fuzzy line between them?
They're just saying.
They've declared that it's phase.
Yeah.
And then you get excited. Okay,
yeah.
I gotcha.
Because originally Ant-Man was supposed to be the first movie of Phase 3, but then they said, no, just kidding. That's Phase 2.
That's clever marketing. Okay.
Yeah.
The moon wasn't in the right phase.
So I think the Avengers is a victory lap, and that's the whole movie kind of sets itself up as that. Is that like this should not have worked. Building all these separate movies and then having all these characters come together in one movie, like where there shouldn't be enough room for all of them. And the whole Phase 1 of Marvel Cinematic Universe is building to that one scene that's the famous scene where the camera spins around them in a 360 as they're all standing there triumphantly. And that's when Marvel won. That's the moment that Marvel won, and it said, look, it worked. This shouldn't have worked. And that's kind of what the movie is about, if you think about it. The Avengers movie is about bringing these people together, and everyone's like, no, this is never going to work. These people are never going to get along. And then the triumphant moment is at the end when they do. And that's a little meta commentary, I think, that they that intentionally put in the film. Because I think Joss Whedon is really good at dealing with meta commentaries on stuff. Cabin in the Woods. But so I think they achieved what they wanted to, and they knew they had a success. And then they looked and said, what can we do now? And I think that's when things start getting really cool. Because Phase 2 starts being, and these are all superhero movies, but they start being very different kind of films. We already talked about Iron Man 3 being like a PTSD type of film for Tony Stark dealing with it. Captain America the Winter Soldier is kind of like a 70s spy thriller with superheroes in it. Guardians of the Galaxy is a space adventure.
Right.
And Ant-Man's a heist movie. So they're taking these films and they're still sticking them in their universe and they're still keeping kind of a similar tone, but they're exploring like totally different genres of film now. And it keeps working is the crazy thing. Like I keep waiting for them to like misstep, and to me it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think I think actually the formula, I don't know if they've done this on purpose, but I've felt for a while like they've borrowed the ideas that worked from Star Wars specifically, where, I mean, you were just talking about how the core conceit is taken seriously, but also there's a fun element, and like I've always said Han Solo or Star Wars doesn't work without Han Solo. The Force doesn't work without Han Solo there to make fun of the Force and sneer at it, and then the Force works and saves the day, and it comes off as, it comes off well instead of coming off as overwrought and self-serious, because you had that element in the movie that was representing your doubt in the concept. So in almost all these movies, there's like at least one character who's sort of like rolling their eyes at what's going on, or pointing out how ridiculous it is that Thor is a Asgardian from Asgard, and it's just absurd. And then you can move forward, that having been said out loud. Yeah, so I think they're self-consciously sort of borrowing elements from other things that make it work, and I think they're almost, I don't want to be too cynical about it, but they're almost going down a list of checkboxes saying, do we have the element where, we have the sidekick character there to make a quip at this point so that this doesn't get taken as too, bombastic and self-serious? Do we have the scientist character there to sort of be ridiculous and comic relief so that you don't feel like the movie thinks the science is real, etc.?
Yeah, I think you're right. That does sound a little depressing, but we have to remember this is still a Disney. These movies are owned by Disney, and Disney's a massive corporation, and these movies are made with a very specific goal, which is to appeal to the widest audience possible and make the most amount of money. But I think they do still succeed in being good films too. And I think the crazy thing for me, especially in Phase 2, is these movies do get dark. I mean, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is kind of a dark, dour film, but it still has that fun element in it. It's a movie that's having Steve Rogers deal with the fact that, you know, he was always a guy that trusted his country and was a man on a mission for the government or some sort of governing authority, and he realizes that is just as corrupt and evil as the things he was fighting against, and it's a soldier dealing with that fact, and that's serious stuff. But it's also a movie with a guy that throws a shield that bounces off things and comes back to him like a boomerang. Like, it can be both, and it does, and it's great. Even when you move into Guardians of the Galaxy, like, I think Guardians might still be my favorite of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think it's just because the space adventure thing appeals to me more than anything else. But also the characters are great, like the humor's great, like it's fun. Yeah. It's just like the perfect space adventure movie, better than Force Awakens, for sure.
Yeah, well, like the way kind of like the scale of power that you see in Guardians, and a lot of like the setting and just like real this whole scope, like you wouldn't think you would almost expect it to be super overly done and kind of corny and cheesy, but somehow they balance it, like not only with good with good writing and music, I think, but just with allowing them to kind of not take themselves too seriously in certain moments, and it just works. Like it just like the climax, like normally, like I feel like that would be like an epic letdown, but it actually like ended, like I loved the ending. I thought it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's. I want to, like, we've talked about how all these movies work individually, and we've kind of touched on the fact that they work combined. But I really want to talk about that because, especially with Civil War coming out, I think the thing that a shared universe and these continuing storylines does is it allows our characters to grow over the course of the movies, in a way that we don't necessarily see in normal sequels. I think if you look at the Tony Stark that was in Iron Man, and if you look at the Tony Stark that's going to be in Civil War, they are almost entirely different people. But we've gotten to see that arc over the course of these films. We've gotten to see how he got from the guy who didn't care about anything to the guy who's willing to side with the government to reign in power. And then the same thing with Captain America over the course of these movies. He was the government guy, and now he's on the opposite side of that. And we've seen that transition in the films. They've taken time, and that I think is what a shared universe story can do, and that is why I'm so excited about Civil War, because I think that the conflict in this movie is going to make sense within the movie itself, but also looking back on everything that's come before it, and that is the advantage that telling stories like this brings you.
It's interesting because, like, most of the time when you're watching movies, you always have to have everything be self-contained and developed within the movie, and it's more often like in TV shows that you spend 6 seasons developing all of the little intricacies of plot details and different characters and stuff, to where you can have these sorts of really awesome moments, like in Game of Thrones. But this is like the first time that there have been this many movies within a single franchise where, like, they can just actually build off of the previous movies that way. I think that is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. They're really good at keeping the character changes consistent too. I think, like, it's something that I don't even know if I noticed consciously. I don't think I do notice it consciously, but you were just talking about how Tony Stark's character changes, Scott. But this version of the Hulk character has also sort of gone through a couple of changes over the 2 Avengers movies. Thor definitely, like, he's probably the dumbest character, but he actually has the clearest arc in like a cartoonish sense of like he starts out as this extremely bombastic, arrogant jerk, and within the first movie kind of learns to be a little bit selfless, and then he maintains those qualities going forward. He doesn't suddenly like revert to being a bombastic jerk. In the next movie, he does still have a lot of pridefulness, and that's good, because people don't change like that. But yeah, they maintain a lot of surprisingly subtle character features between the movies, which I never really realized until thinking about it now.
And I think there's a temptation in storytelling to kind of revert some of those character traits to create conflict, because it's a lot easier when you have a character to fall back on. Oh well, he's bombastic and reckless, and that's going to create conflict. But I think a lot of these movies create conflict in a different way. Like I don't think Age of Ultron was a perfect movie, but I did love that the conflict was created because of Tony Stark's character change, because he's become a person that, instead of being indifferent to the world, is so concerned with saving the world, but his arrogance still makes him think that he's the only one that's capable of doing it, and that's what creates this AI that tries to destroy everything. So it's conflict that's created kind of naturally out of their character arcs, and that's just good writing.
Yeah, totally, I agree.
So does anyone else have anything nice to say? Because I want to give, because these aren't perfect movies, and we've been talking them up for a while, and there's still some problems here. So does anyone want to say anything else nice before we touch on some of the problems that these movies tend to have?
I enjoyed X-Men 2. That's all I have to say.
I'm a huge fan of this version of Hulk, and I wish Ruffalo would get his own movie.
Me too.
Love it. Like,
yeah, I
he's
guess
literally one of my favorites now. I love his work in his as Hulk. That's great.
Like saying that, like you have to be reminded that there were two other Hulks in recent memory that were horrible, and that still somehow the Marvel franchise was successful. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, like the movie, like Bannock couldn't really save the first movie because it was just so terribly terrible that it just couldn't go anywhere. And Ed Norton wasn't.
He's not the Hulk.
He's just not. Yeah, he's just not. Yeah, he's just not what I envision as like Bruce Banner, I guess.
Ruffalo has this gentle.
It's great.
Aspect to him that just works for Banner. But see, I think the thing of that is maybe the honest truth is Hulk can't stand up on his own in a standalone movie. Like maybe it just doesn't work.
Right. And that's kind of and that's kind of what I chalked it up to, as like maybe they're thinking it just doesn't work for him.
Yeah. I mean, there's rumors he's going to be in the new Thor movie. Maybe he's going to appear in Guardians of the Galaxy. They're going to work him in, but I don't know. Maybe
if they at least, not even at least, but if they did that, that's more than enough for me, I would say. Like, you don't have to, I don't necessarily need a whole movie, but like it'd be nice to continue to see kind of the development of his character, and just in general.
The thing about Hulk that interestingly segues into the final nice thing that I was going to say, I was going to say that they've done a really good job. I don't know if this happened just like organically due to the fact that this is who the Avengers characters happen to be, but the powers of these characters are actually fairly circumscribed, except the Hulk, and that's kind of the problem. So like Iron Man is purely just a guy in a robot suit, not magical at all. Can be destroyed, can be killed. Thor is just like a really strong guy who can sort of fly, but not really, and he can also conceivably be killed. I'm not going to go through all of them, but those guys are probably the strongest. Then there's Hulk, who has his beast mode where he's functionally invulnerable, and that makes it a lot less dramatic. And I will unfortunately have to contrast this to DC and point out that unless you play Superman in a lighthearted way, it's always going to be hard to make it work, because Superman is intrinsically too powerful for the setting, if that makes sense. Like you have to throw in stuff like kryptonite for the story to go anywhere at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well,
yeah, I think,
and the conflict with the Hulk was always an internal conflict between losing control and not, right?
Right.
So how do you grow that character? Like, Age of Ultron ends with Banner and the Hulk presumably kind of becoming one finally. Like he's flies away in the jet and he's still in Hulk form, so he's in control now. But so how do you grow that character from that point? And I think that's going to be a tough thing to pull off. But you know what? They've earned my goodwill, and I think they can do it.
Yeah.
So
to the negatives.
Let's switch to the things that I don't think that we don't think work in these movies, because I think we've touched on this a lot in other podcasts before, Matt. It's just come up in other talks because Marvel is so prevalent in everything movies these days. The thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm sure we'll each have our own, but my big problem is the MacGuffins that are present in each of these movies.
Yeah, like the scepter and all that shit.
Yeah, so
arc reactor.
Everything is leading up to the Infinity Stones. The big Phase 3 closing event is the Infinity War. So there's these stones, and in order to tie them into the continuing universe, they've used them as the big thing that people are trying to get in each of these movies. And I don't like it. It's like,
is it just gonna end up being this massive chase scene in the last one? like fucking, the Guardians, running away with the purple one and blah blah blah, just all this crazy shit.
Yeah, well, they
can't do that. It would be an epic fail.
No, but it's just like the stone has no meaning outside of this is a really powerful thing that we can't let the bad guys get, and that creates the conflict.
Yeah. And the problem, I think the problem with these MacGuffins in general is that they're not analogous to anything in real life, and it's very difficult to feel any kind of dramatic connection to them. Like, how often did somebody take your source of power from you and you had to go chase them and get it back? Like, it's a very
fantastical
fantastical thing. I mean, fantasy is exactly the word. It feels more like, it's Excalibur, the magical sword of destiny, than it feels like any kind of it's super not an organic character thing, which these movies usually do well. So
it'd be nice if they kind of kind of alleviated the use of them. I agree, but I think for what they do, I think it's balanced okay for the most part.
Yeah, I think this is probably that reason is why they probably don't bother me very much, because they're essentially treated like the suitcase in Pulp Fiction, where it's just like it's the thing in the background that it's a comic book movie, so there has to be a MacGuffin and they're all fighting for it, but it doesn't really matter. Like, that's not I understand that it's lazy writing to do this, and yes, the part of me that wishes that the Marvel movies were perfectly well written wants them to be better in this way, but for what the Marvel movies are, this isn't really my biggest problem with them, I guess. I don't know.
That's fair.
Dale, does Worm have a MacGuffin? This is an honest question. I can't think of one. Because Worm does everything right.
I don't think it does. I mean, maybe Tinker powers are sort of MacGuffin. There are places where things are poorly explained and then stuff is shoved under the rug, but there's not really any explicit MacGuffins. I don't think.
Not the same thing as the briefcase, though.
Yeah.
And again, I think they smartly do relegate them to the background. Avengers, the MacGuffin is the Tesseract, but the movie's not really about the Tesseract. It's about the characters coming together. The same thing in Age of Ultron has the Mind Stone, but the movie's not really about that. It's about them dealing with their place as monsters and creating monsters, and there are themes going on in the films independent of the silly MacGuffin, and I am appreciative of that. You're right, but sometimes it just gets drained. I guess the thing that for me, it worries me if all of this is building up to the Infinity War, then I'm worried, because the Infinity War is just going to be MacGuffin Central, where like this infinite power glove, like I don't even know how you do that, and that's what kind of has me worried.
Yeah,
they seem to be leaning on it so much in their overall story arc.
Yeah, I guess I can see it. There are some interesting parallels to Worm here, and since Worm did everything perfectly, this might be pulled off.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is I've gotten to the point where even when I'm worried, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, they're gonna figure it out, because they've done it every other time. Like, I never thought a movie with a raccoon and a tree would work, and they pulled it off. So
Yeah.
I didn't think Ant-Man as a concept would make a film that would be successful, and they did it. So, but let's move on. Let's move on to other some of your complaints. I guess, Daniel, I kind of think I know what yours is going to be, so why don't you go for it?
So, I mean, it's my complaints are I wish they were just different sorts of movies, but and that's, I mean, it's not really fair because they are what they are, but I feel like it's hard to criticize them because they're just not trying to do what I want them to do, I guess. If that makes sense, because I could argue at length about like why the plots are ridiculous and they're farcical and don't make any sense and are not like realistic in any sense of the word, but like that doesn't matter. That's not why you're watching the movie, so it's not a big deal really. I guess maybe the most frustrating thing about the kind of the plot line that they're trying to push now, which is like sort of this like fascism against like unity or something. Like they're trying to be political about it, but I feel like they're trying to be serious and ridiculous at the same time, and it's really hard to make the tone work the way the Marvel movies have been so far. Like I think it's very difficult for those movies to pull off serious moments, and they have sometimes, but like we mentioned earlier, like X-Men 3 was terrible, and that just failed miserably, and yeah, that's the main root of my complaint, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I mean, are we going beyond the MCU with that, or are you talking about? Okay.
So, Gentry, do you have any complaints?
I mean, nothing major, I guess. I mean, I guess I don't know. It really is because every movie is kind of different that it's hard for me to really find something in common that I disapprove of, like as a whole. I think it's mainly just I'd like to see them, like, the one thing that excites me so much about Civil War is we finally get to see them fight each other. Not that that's ever a good thing, but like you get to see someone of equal strength or whatever, equal skill in a different way go against each other. And I was just getting tired of seeing all these trash pieces in the Avengers movies just get destroyed like nothing. Like, I don't know. It would have been like a nice surprise to see Ultron create something that actually was hard for them to stop. I mean, like, not, I'm saying like, not, the fact that, they lifted the city, obviously that's different, but like, just, that they were able to fight other superheroes, I guess. Kind of like they do on the individual level, but I would have liked to see that a little bit more in the Avengers, on the Avengers type stage.
Yeah, I think. Actually, sorry, go ahead.
That actually, I think that kind of clarifies one of my complaints, probably. So, like, consider Age of Ultron and how they're trying to like raise the stakes by having Ultron make like a ton of copies of himself, and then they kill a character, and it's so scary and depressing. But it's like, no, now there are a whole bunch of copies of Ultron that get dispatched easily because there's hundreds of them, and you don't care about the person they kill off because
there was a
minor
little
character.
there was definitely some tonal issues, kind of like in some of those moments in Age of Ultron, and obviously that's why it has its problems, because you see that. But I was more moved by like Scarlet's reaction than I was at the fact that Quicksilver had just been killed, and I don't know if that's just because I just saw him in another movie as a completely different person.
A much better realization of Quicksilver.
Sure, right. I actually do prefer the X-Men version a lot more. And it upsets me that that's a thing. But like, it's just like moments like that the MCU can't always nail.
Yeah, and I think I think there are great moments. I love Nighthawk and Scarlet Witch's conversation when he's trying to convince her to fight back or to just go away.
Right.
You step out the door, you're an Avenger. I love that conversation. I think that's great. But I agree that
he's like I shoot a bow and arrow.
Yeah, none of this makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I agree Quicksilver's death didn't really work. I agree that it's getting kind of tiring. We had the Chitauri in Avengers 1 and have the Ultron robots in this where it's just mindless waves of enemies we don't care about showing them mow them down. And I think that ties into what, and I hope I'm not stepping on your point, Matt, but I think the villains in the Marvel Universe are not very good for the most part. I think the DC Universe, so far. The DC Universe villains are, for the most part, like, I think that the thing was that in DC, the villains are more interesting than the heroes, and in Marvel, the heroes are more interesting than the villains. But I would like to see that change.
Me too. That'd be nice.
Magneto was a great villain, but
they don't have him yet.
But now they're making a big purple guy the big bad. So
who cares about Thanos? Like it doesn't. Yeah, and I think that's why I'm so excited about Civil War. There is going to be a villain in that movie, but it's kind of a puppet master pulling the strings. Where the real conflict is going to be between these two separate groups.
But at the same time, this feels sort of cheap because it's like, well, we couldn't think of any good villains, so let's have them fight each other. And like, I know that this exists in the comic book universe, but still feels cheap.
Yeah, but I think, and again, I haven't seen the movie, but I think that it might feel cheap and obvious, and they might just be doing it because of.
But it hasn't really happened,
DC.
Though.
But
not in movie form. So although it's maybe cheap, at least it's something new.
And everything they've built up to this point, like it makes sense that that's kind of a logical.
Right. Yeah, they fit into the story pretty well, pretty nicely.
I mean, I think the problem is also that it's basically impossible to have a villain in a superhero universe that like is actually scary without completely destroying the tone. Like Exhibit A, Watchmen. Exhibit B, like
Dark Knight,
Man of Steel. Yeah, Dark Knight. Like when you actually have super powered bad guys, they would just kill everyone. Like they would kill scores and scores of people.
Yeah,
and there's nothing the heroes could do about it because this is how superpowers would actually work if you thought about it for any amount of time.
Or conversely, to make them scary, rather than using superpowers, they just are really evil and stab a guy through the eye with a pencil in their first scene.
Right. So like it's hard to take the villains seriously because of this, because you know they're not going to do anything of substance really. They're going to have lightning whips that they whip at the bad guy because that's the sort of movie that it is, and then they're going to be dispatched quickly.
Yeah, but I think you can make it like, I liked that Ultron was an AI with daddy issues. And I liked Ultron's conflict with Tony.
Yeah, like the characters themselves can be interesting, but their actions are never like actually evil seeming. Right. I guess to me.
Yeah. I cared more about the character of Ultron than I cared about any character in that movie. Which, I mean, if I can just go ahead and say my criticism, which I've sort of been. It unfortunately it's sort of I see as being the root of all of the problems you guys are talking about, although maybe that's oversimplifying, would just be like a significant lack of stakes, because you know that these characters aren't going to die generally, and so the stakes can't be, oh no, are they going to die? And sometimes they try to make it like, oh well, is their girlfriend gonna die? And it's like, well, that's actually pretty lame. First of all, I kind of know you're not gonna kill their girlfriend, and even if you did kill their girlfriend, that's not actually as dramatic as like it's so remote. It's kind of like I said before, like it's so remote from normal human experience. Like someone having a secret that they're keeping from their loved ones, actually you feel that more, like you feel the threat of that stake more than you feel like, oh no, are they going to kill the girlfriend? Because unless they've done a really good job making you care about a character, which is hard and time consuming, you're not really going to care. um like I think it's probably why everybody likes Tony Stark, is because he has the most sort of character stakes. um like he's
Yeah.
trying to accomplish more. He's trying to not only like save everybody, but he's trying to like, at least in his own movies, he's trying to like redeem himself and change in some way. And the stakes are really more like, is he going to succeed in in changing what he's trying to do, and sort of, and really only the first movie he actually, I think that's actually true. I I think I never actually saw the third one. The second one, um, he just kind of like tries to do something and then does it. Kind of rambling here, but I mean, do you guys agree that like uh, a manifestation of this is that you just don't feel that much during the movies? You just sort of,
Yeah,
you don't
I
look back
definitely
on them. Yeah, you don't look back on them like, oh, that scene just really tugged at my heartstrings, and I had to kind of wipe away a tear. It's like how I can't think of, there may be one or two moments in this entire MCU that did that to me, and I think all of them involve Tony Stark.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I
guess
disagree with that. I think every movie has a couple of scenes that kind of hit the right strings. But with me, I mean, I like the way I see what you're saying. The way I process that is, um, because there's so much canon already that you almost know it's hard to feel a lot of the tension when you kind of know that even if someone does die, because we live in the world that we do live in, there's a very good chance that they come back. But they can still weave the story in a way that, you know, it builds tension and creates, you know, an emotional audience and stuff like that. Just like, you know, just like Game of Thrones does. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I already knew was coming, or that we all knew that was coming in the show in the earlier seasons, and yet it's still, well, again, certain scenes, right, still hit
Well,
some certain chords.
yeah,
But
I mean,
that's kind of the way I see the Marvel, you know, same.
yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to necessarily argue, but like Tyrion, you care about a lot of, you care about whether he's going to get his resolution with, you know, on an individual basis with Jaime, with Cersei, with his father, which he does. You know, it's not really about whether Tyrion is going to die. And
yeah,
I mean, and you can feel free to disagree. I just feel like most of these movies, they don't necessarily sell me on that.
but yeah, see, I don't
could see that. I could see that.
this is a superhero movie,
Right.
It's
also
the heroes are gonna win.
right. Obviously, complete
like
defense.
that's a known. I think, to me, and I think that the Marvel universe does do this well. I think the stakes are always very personal for these guys. I think it's not, am I going to survive? It's, what am I going to have to do to win, or what will be the reaction or the change that happens. What is it going to take? What am I going to have to give up? What am I going to lose? I think Ant-Man is a movie that has probably the best stakes in the entire film, or the entire universe, and those stakes are a man trying to win back the love and trust of his daughter.
Yeah.
And that's the stakes of that film. So yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. You can't in a superhero movie set up the stakes as, are the good guys going to win? Are the bad guys going to lose? Because we go into that movie knowing that that's going to be the case.
But at the same time, the stakes are framed via, can the good guy punch the bad guy hard enough to achieve his other goals? So it's like there are more clever ways of achieving, and I mean, I agree, Ant-Man does it quite well. Like, but at the same time, the bad guy is ridiculous in Ant-Man, and I don't buy his motivations at all, and he's just kind of a crazy person.
Yeah, I mean, the villains in these movies aren't good.
Comic book villains.
But
I mean, I like Math and I Return to Worm a lot because it actually does do everything perfectly. And the way the reason it's good, one, is that the main character is actually a villain, like, and
she becomes
and it
a
works.
villain.
Yeah, she becomes a villain.
She tries to be a hero, and it doesn't work out, and she becomes a villain, very very organically in the sense. Yeah, sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
And and many of the actual villain characters are also humanized throughout the story and become like characters you care about. I mean, it's basically exactly the same thing as Jaime Lannister in the Game of Thrones series, where he starts off being like this horrible person that cripples Bran, and then eventually he's like this character with nuance. Like, why don't they do that with actual villain characters instead of making them comic book villains? And the answer is it's a comic book movie, but that's really unsatisfying.
I think they do.
Doesn't Loki
do that with some of them? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think we're just gonna go back and forth. But I just think. I mean, I think Ant-Man does it really well. Age of Ultron. I loved the end stakes of that movie because there's a giant city racing into the sky, and the whole movie's kind of about setting the stage for this. Are the Avengers really good, and are they doing good things? And there's moments there where they're like, okay, the only way to stop this thing from killing the entire world is to just blow up this entire island, killing thousands of people. And it's like, what are they going to do? Are they going to be the people that everyone thinks they are, where they're just agents of a government trying to do what's best for all of humanity, or are they going to be the heroes? And what are they going to lose in that process? And I don't know. I love that. I don't think it. I agree that the villains aren't that great. But I think they do. Like, I think they spend time with Ultron. They spent time with Loki. And those two happen to be, I think, two of the best villains in the series so far. So I don't know. I see your point, but I don't fully agree.
It's a combination of them being like they're hamstrung. Like they have to have the narrative structure of the villain gets punched hard enough at the end, and then the story is over. And that is extremely constricting, I think.
Well, think about think about the end of Ultron. If like the floating whatever thing that what's his face, Nick Fury flies or whatever. Like, what if that had been shot down and like, you know, the regular people end up dying in the end, or a lot of them do, a lot more. It takes it to a pretty dark place, and it's like exactly like hamstrung is a good word for that.
Well, what about the actual end of Ultron, which is the Vision? The Vision talking to Ultron in that scene, like
execute
that
was good.
But that's such a good scene, though. Like,
that's a good scene.
They're talking about humanity, and like Ultron still doesn't understand why. Like he pities them and doesn't understand why Vision's helping them, and it's just this wonderful moment.
That's true.
Yeah, that's pretty funny, because I was about to say something about how you can't have stuff in the MCU like the main character of Worm executing somebody who who basically really needs to be executed, and then I realized, like, well, the Vision executes Ultron at the end of this movie, so was
the only time.
It's true, and so I actually see all of your points, and I can see that they are trying to put in, like, these are very competent writers. I'm not going to teach them anything. Like, they know how to put in the stakes. The problem is that they're not connecting to me emotionally, and maybe that's
fair, because
I'm a cynical old man or something. I don't know. Maybe if I was younger, or just you know, less of a critical person or whatever, I would be like feeling these movies more. And it's, you know, like the Spider-Man movies really emotionally affected me, and I'm like, okay, well, is that because they're amazing, or is that because I was a teenager? So
Spider-Man 2, I think it's just because it was amazing.
Yeah,
because that train sequence will never not be the best moment in comic book.
Also, they
cinema.
Humanized the villain, and he was a real person, and it was great, and it was well written, and it was a good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, really, the only solution to my problem is essentially to make them not so formulaic that I can see where they're going. And Worm was only able to do this by having the author roll dice to decide who died in major events. So yeah. I think I just can't actually be satisfied by the constraints on the Marvel universe.
That's okay.
Well, and, you know, talking all this like villain talk, like that's part of the reason why I like the X-Men the new class as an individual movie is because I think Fassbender does such a great job kind of in that role.
Oh, you mean where Magneto's the good guy at first, and then he decides to be the villain?
Yeah, but this is the best one.
Same thing they do in every single X-Men movie ever.
No, they don't do that at all in the first X-Men. They don't really. Barely helps them in the second X-Men. Look, you can't really count the ones with it's really just there as like a set piece, basically.
Yeah,
he literally is just there. Like, at least Fassbender has some depth to the character, you know.
Magneto makes sense because he's not. X-Men really sort of defies this villain hero categorization because Magneto is like, I'm a guy who has an agenda. He's not like and his agenda isn't like I'm going to rule the world with a tyrannical fist because I am a evil psychopath. Like, he thinks he has politics. He's no different from some people on my Facebook feed who, if they had mutant powers, would probably use them to enact their political will, basically. Where it's not an Ultron scenario, really. It's not a what's the guy in the new purple guy?
Thanos.
It's not Thanos. It's not Apocalypse. He's just a guy who's like, I disagree with you, Charles Xavier, and I'm gonna go do this stuff, and it makes sense.
Right.
Like you're actually with his character in his scene.
This giant bridge.
And lift this giant bridge.
Another thing he does in every single movie.
Move it over here. Well, or baseball stadium.
Sorry.
You, Scott. It's still a superhero movie, okay? You can't.
Wait, are you saying you actually don't like Fassbender's Magneto because?
No, I like Fassbender's Magneto. I just don't like the X-Men movies at all.
See, for whatever reason, Magneto doing things is one of the only superpower things in movies that I actually like think is cool anymore. Because I've watched too many like DBZ style battles. There's something visceral about when he stands there and then he kind of like acts like he has to strain, and then lifts this enormous whatever it is.
It'll be something. It'll be something. Don't worry.
Yeah, whatever it is. Statue of Liberty next time.
It's going to be some giant structure that he's going to lift.
No, wait, we already did the Statue of Liberty. Okay.
I think it's another bridge in this next movie, which, by the way, looks awful.
It's going to be great. It's going to be so great.
We're off topic.
It's basically going to be the cartoon that we watched as kids.
Yeah.
Which is
That's all I want.
Can't wait.
Ugh, it looks like aesthetically awful.
I don't know, man. I think you're judging a little too prematurely. I think you need to relax.
Okay, we'll see.
So, just a quick trivia. Like, apparently, the voice, the Apocalypse voice in the trailer is not the voice that's going to be in the movie, which makes me happy because Apocalypse's voice is one of the key aspects of like how I think of him as having this.
Is it going to be like digitally changed?
It's going to be, yeah. I mean, I hope it's going to be closer to the cartoon voice because the cartoon voice is the correct voice because that's how I grew up with it.
Okay.
But yes, it's going to be digitally changed.
I hope it's not as bad as the Batman voice in Batman v Superman.
Me too.
You haven't seen that movie,
Batman voice.
All right. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I think 2 days, Phase 3 starts, and I think we're all really excited. Even Daniel.
Even me.
I'm excited about the one-off new movies. I'm excited about Doctor Strange. I'm excited about Black Panther.
Yeah.
I'm excited about their take on Spider-Man, which comes out next year.
Right.
I'm really excited about that. But yeah, we'll see. I think this was it's a great universe, and it's way better than DC's. Way better.
Damn it, Scott.
And I will collect my check from Disney in the morning.
But not better than the Worm MCU.
Okay, that's not a thing.
Sorry, the WCU.
It's not a thing.
Right. It will be.
It will be.
We should have done an over-under on how many times you would mention Worm in this podcast.
Yeah.
I would have lost.
We still have time.
I mean, I basically just want to do a whole podcast about Worm, which is hard because you haven't read it.
Well, maybe one of the weeks I'm on vacation, you and Daniel can just record a Worm podcast.
Okay.
It's just your homework for next week.
Was the new
to read thousands of pages.
2 million word novel.
Just voted on?
What?
A new book voted on?
Oh, for the no, not yet. Well, actually, we have a book. I just haven't announced it yet. He's talking about the book club.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Liminal States.
Liminal States, yeah.
All right. So let's wrap this thing up by talking about what we've been watching. So James Gentry, you go first. You forgot.
No,
Would you like me to remind you?
No, I was just thinking about that awesome show that you told me not to mention.
Now you have to. You can't just say that.
Everybody needs to go out and watch Forged in Fire on History Channel. I'm sorry, it's just something really funny on the History app. That's about it.
Gentry's really into blacksmithing, so it's like
it's just funny reality. I'm not a reality TV person, so when I like come across something that's actually like entertaining, in my opinion, I guess it's just find it amusing, and it's just trash TV. But in this case, it's like nerdy trash TV. So yeah, I'm not really recommending that. I'm actually recommending Silicon Valley, which I'm sure everyone already watches, but it's a wonderful show.
Actually, 2 people on this podcast don't watch it, so it's a good recommendation.
That's okay.
That is true.
It's like a 4-hour season binge. It's very short, and yeah, it's good stuff.
It's really good. You guys should
keep it short. I'll have to go into it. Yeah.
Daniel, what have you been watching / entertaining yourself with?
So just to give you the idea of how much of a Marvel fan I am, Laura and I thought that Captain America came out last week. So I bought tickets for Captain America, and I went to the theater with Laura, and I gave the Captain America tickets to the person, and they even ripped the tickets. And then they realized that it was a week later.
No way.
So instead, I watched the Ratchet and Clank movie, which, I only played like part of one of the Ratchet and Clank games, but it was okay. It was an okay little movie.
That movie hasn't been advertised at all.
I had no idea there was one.
No, I didn't either.
I knew vaguely that it existed, but
it was just a very safe video game movie that was fairly formulaic, but
why did they market it?
I don't think they had the money to, probably, but
so then why did they make it?
Why?
Were people clamoring for a Ratchet and Clank movie?
I don't know, but it exists.
Okay.
So
well, there we go. Matt, what's your thing?
Nothing that jumps out. I watched Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was about it.
That's a great movie.
It is.
Really
I forgot how great it was.
All right.
It's very, very good movie. Yeah.
You talking about? Did you say Raiders?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Is that
fantastic movie.
No Ticket, or is that the different one?
That's a different one.
Okay.
Yeah, of course I like Last Crusade better.
Right.
No, I still like Raiders the best, but
yeah,
Last
you're
Crusade
just
is
objectively wrong on that one.
Well,
Raiders.
That's next week's podcast.
Don't listen to him, Matt. Don't listen to him.
Gentry's just really mad at me because I insulted his precious X-Men.
It's the face melting.
You love The Last Crusade, okay? It is a great movie.
I do like The Last Crusade, but Raiders is better.
I mean, neither of them compare to the Crystal Seal.
Get out of here.
Kidding, everyone.
You chose poorly.
All right. I have a couple things that I wanted to talk about. I saw Keanu last week.
Oh, is it good?
Yes, everyone needs to see that movie. And it didn't do very well last week, so I want everyone to go see that movie.
I didn't know it was out. I would have seen that last week if I knew that was out.
It was. It's really funny. It's like, if you like Key and Peele, if you like their brand of humor, and if you like cats, you will love this movie.
That's 3 for 3.
It's really great. The other thing I saw is there's secret screenings up in Dallas, Richardson area, at the Alamo Drafthouse up there from the American Genre Film Archive. They just grab a movie and we don't know what it is, and you just sit down. So I did that yesterday, and the movie I saw was a 70s kung fu movie called Dragon vs. Needles of Death.
That sounds amazing.
It's incredible. So the story is 2 people training at in kung fu. One of them is really good at fighting, the other is really good at throwing nails at trees. And through a comedy of errors, they end up having to fight each other, and it's great. It's so good. But none of you will probably ever be able to see that, because I think there were only 10 canisters made. So there's only 10 versions of this film out there.
This is an Alamo Drafthouse thing, you said?
Uh-huh.
So they opened one in San Francisco like not that long ago, and we've been once already, and it's of course amazing. So
yeah,
maybe they will have a showing.
Maybe. It's so good. I laughed so much. And also, I mean, the kung fu is fairly good. But apparently, the production company that released this released 10 movies, and what their claim to fame was they had a person called Bruce Lee, not Lee, Bruce Lee Li.
Excellent.
So they put his name on their posters, and then they made movies similar sounding to the name of famous Bruce Lee movies, in hopes that people accidentally stumbled into their movie. One of the taglines for one of their movies was, "You've seen Bruce Lee, now see Bruce Lee."
Wonderful.
So that's the type of film we're dealing with here. But no, it was good. It was really good. All right. So that's it for us this week and Marvel. Next week, Matt, if you see Captain America over the weekend, we're going to talk about Captain America. If not, we have a backup plan, which is we're going to do a whole preview of this summer, because there's a lot of movies coming out this summer, including X-Men Apocalypse, Gentry. There you go. I mentioned it for you.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that. So that's all I got. We want to do where we can find each of you. Gentry, you go first.
Just my Twitter handle is wenchtweet, and that's about it.
Daniel?
You can find me at the Berkeley Science Review.
Matt?
I tweet at @moredinamail.
And I am at Scott Daly 85. That's DALY. You can also follow our website Twitter at Daily Planet Films. And you can see all of our writing, including our week-by-week discussions on Game of Thrones, at dailyplanetfilms.com. So if you could share this podcast, like it, subscribe, favorite it, all the buttons that you can press on podcasts, please do that.
Yeah. Every one of them.
Yeah. And we will see you next week.
Podcast is over. It's done. We hope you all had some fun. Go back to your work or your school. Maybe the gym. Hey, that's cool. Regardless, just go away. But please come back next Friday. There'll be a brand